At this point, I think we should all be aware of what Project Veritas is and why it should never be trusted or cited as a source. Those people are not journalists. They've never been correct about anything. They've been caught time after time deceptively editing videos to push certain conservative narratives, which is the complete opposite of what journalism actually is. And yet, knowing all this is true, they're killing it when it comes to fundraising. Even after its claims of finding proof of massive voter fraud were thoroughly and embarrassingly debunked by even their star witness, which recanted under questioning, the group was still making money hand over fist when it came to fundraising. In fact, according to public filings, the organization nearly doubled its revenue in 2020, raising about $22 million compared with $12 million in 2019. Now think about that for a second. So right there, for those 2 years, they made $32 million in revenue. Wow. Now just imagine that kind of money going into a left-wing journalistic outlet. Could you imagine? I couldn't imagine. Think of the good that money would do. Think about if David Sirota, Ken Klippenstein, Alex Koch, and Jeremy Scahill, and a whole host of other actual investigative journalists had access to that kind of money, that funding. No strings attached. Here's the money. Go create an investigative journalistic outlet and go after actual corruption. Do it. Oh, the stuff they could do. The stuff they could find. But see, understand that kind of funding does not exist on the left. Now, corporate media is not left. It's pro-corporate. It shuts down a lot of stories of political corruption. Not all of them, but most of them. It shuts down stories of legalized bribery, and actual journalists end up having to rely on Patreon and Substack just to survive. Because, CNN's not going to hire David Sirota. No, they're going to hire former Trump people. They're going to put out articles by Edward Isaac DeVere that fawn over Nancy Pelosi. Oh, what a master legislator she is. Wonderful, wonderful. But that's basically what they do. They do political advertising. Ads. They don't do on-the-ground journalism. It's very rare. And by the way, when they do actual journalism, we give them credit here on the show. I'm like, oh, wonderful reporting by the New York Times. Wonderful reporting by the Washington Post in investigative journalism. But that does not happen often. Most of the time, it's paid propaganda. It's fluff pieces for establishment politicians. That's unfortunate. Now, the right wing, however, well, they take the money and they put it in their pocket. In fact, James O'Keefe made a salary of $412,000 from the group itself in a single year. Nearly $500,000. These people are wealthy beyond imagining. And guess what? They do it by deceptive means. They peddle right-wing nonsense, they push conspiracy theories, and they do so-called sting videos, which again are deceptively edited out of context. Now, the one thing you can give them credit for is, boy, are they really good at doing the propaganda and pushing that message. And they're incredibly successful. Now, they're also, by the way, so successful that Project Veritas is buying lobbyists now. They're buying lobbyists. The first one is an ex-aide to former Vice President Mike Pence. Amazing. Amazing. Now, the thing is, okay, so now Project Veritas, believe it or not, also considers itself to be a charitable organization. It's set up as a 501c3 organization. So now in that, it's not supposed to be for profit, obviously, but it doesn't matter. They'll pay they'll give James O'Keefe $412,000 a year. And that's perfectly legal. Now they also are able to hide a lot of their donors. Also, as a stipulation though, and by the way, they're tax exempt too. But they're also supposed to abstain from campaigning activity. And so, yes, they can't literally go out and campaign for members of political office, but they can put out sting videos against Democrats or Democratic officials, which again are highly deceptively edited and push a false narrative. So now, yeah, they are able to hide their donors for the most part, but we can still see some of them, according to disclosures, by their benefactors themselves. In fact, we find out that more than a quarter of the revenue raised by Project Veritas came from one source called the Bradley Impact Fund, which is a donor-advised conservative philanthropy group based in Milwaukee. This is according to their tax filings. Now, the Bradley Foundation, when you look into their history, what they actually do, you're not going to be surprised. They bankroll numerous conservative causes. One of these organizations actually, or numerous organizations behind a cause, presses for voter restrictions. So stamping out voting rights, doing things like voter ID, purges, ending ballot harvesting, ending the drop boxes, making voting much more difficult, more onerous, more time consuming. That's what the Bradley Impact Fund, you could say they're having a big impact on voting. And so they are funding these organizations, and they're funding Project Veritas, which then puts out videos about massive voter fraud. Yeah. So now the Bradley Foundation, let's get to the numbers here. They gave Project Veritas a grant of $6.5 million. Bradley's largest expenditure last year, and far more than it provided to Project Veritas in all of the years since 2012 combined, according to a review of its disclosures. And again, it's because they put out these videos saying, we found voter fraud. And so, the solution to doing voter fraud, to stopping this voter fraud that we uncovered, is to do voting restrictions. Oh, look at that. And we just happen to have gotten $6.5 million from a place that wants to push voter restrictions. Weird. Strange how that works out. Now, a spokeswoman for the Bradley Impact Fund had declined to comment on the Project Veritas grant, but wrote in an email that the nonprofit's principles include a, quote, belief in constitutional order, free markets, a strong civil society, informed citizens, and donor intent. Now, that grant was identified by the Watchdog Group, documented and confirmed by the Washington Post through public filings. So, again, a good example of actual investigative journalism. If only we could see much, much more of that. Now, the Post also noted that some of the groups funded by the Bradley Foundation and associated with the Bradley Fund are libertarian organizations like FreedomWorks. Yes, FreedomWorks, which is a Koch-backed network that helped fuel the Tea Party movement. They have also amplified findings by Project Veritas. That's not all. Other large conservative donor groups have also given to Project Veritas as well, including Donors Trust. Now, that's a fund that allows contributors to remain anonymous while giving massive donations. They gave $1 million to the group, according to its 2020 tax filing. The Gardner Grout Foundation, a Reno-based philanthropy that lists no mission statement and no employees on its tax filings, contributed $325,000 last year to Project Veritas, more than 3 times the amount it gave the year before. Weird. It's foundation that has no mission statement and no employees. It seems sus. Very, very sus. And then $15,000 also went into Project Veritas from an Arizona-based philanthropy called the Emmanuel Charitable Foundation, which also distributed funds to groups as disparate as the Midwest Innocence Project, a nonprofit seeking to address wrongful convictions, and True the Vote. So a little bit of a mixed bag there. True the Vote, of course, is one of those election fraud groups that basically go around and intimidate voters. So wonderful, because of course. So again, you can see that this is an astroturf movement. That's there just to spread lies and conspiracies about the 2020 election. And again, it's being funded by these massively deep-funded conservative groups that just want to stop voting. They want to shut it down. They want to shut it down. Guess what? Guess why? Because conservatives lose when the people actually have a voice. If only right-wingers vote, by the way, and this is the big problem, okay? Because these groups also ultimately protect corporate rule. They restrict voting so that right-wingers stay into power, and so they'll never have to pay taxes or follow regulations. That's what it is. And so, again, if only right-wingers are allowed to vote, what's going to happen to both parties? Well, they're going to chase the voters. They're going to chase the voters to the right. It's why the Overton window has kept shifting despite the country being more progressive. That's it. A lot of people are being locked out of the franchise, or they're being dissuaded by the massive flood of corporate money that has taken over our political system and controlled both parties. So now we're stuck under right-wing, conservative corporate rule. And now you have the media, both corporate and right-wing media like Project Veritas and groups like Project Veritas. They're funded to do the same thing. They are there to protect corporate rule in any way they can. By hook or by crook, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And unfortunately, because of the fact that corporations do run our government, do run our system, and have massive amounts of resources, they're able to pour money into these groups and into the message in order to continue that system. Understand that this is what we face. This is the problem with the system. We've got to change the system. We've got to get the money out. We've got to fight against corporate rule. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.